That morning, like every other day, I woke up at 5:30 a.m. The house was still quiet, and I went straight to the kitchen to prepare breakfast. I made a hearty meal: fried eggs, crispy grilled bacon, sautéed spinach, fluffy pancakes, and a platter of fresh fruit. After finishing, I tasted everything, feeling proud of how delicious it all turned out. Once everything was ready, I set the table and served breakfast for my husband and mother-in-law as they woke up and joined me. My husband, Larry, took a bite and muttered under his breath, "Oh," as if he was impressed. I thought he liked it. But then, my mother-in-law picked up her fork, examined the food with an unimpressed expression, and suddenly blurted out the unthinkable. "What is this?" she scoffed. "It looks like dog food." I froze. Was she serious? Before I could even process her words, she continued, her voice dripping with disgust. "I can't believe you served this. This is what you call breakfast." I clenched my fists, trying to stay calm, but before I could respond, Larry took another bite, scrunched up his nose, and shockingly agreed. "Yeah, it does taste pretty bad," he said casually. "Honestly, I'd rather eat dog food than this." His words stung deeper than I could have ever imagined. My heart sank, and frustration boiled inside me. Without saying a single word, I stood up, gathered all the plates, and dumped everything straight into the trash. My appetite was gone. So was my patience. Let me introduce myself. My name is Laura. I'm 33 years old, and until last year, I was an independent working woman. But that all changed when I married Larry. We met at work, and after falling in love, we decided to start a life together. Our early days as newlyweds were wonderful. At least, that's what I thought. Larry had expressed his desire for me to become a stay-at-home wife, and out of love, I agreed. I quit my job and dedicated myself to managing our home. Cooking, cleaning, everything. I wanted to be the perfect wife for him. Since I had lived alone for years, I already knew how to cook, but after marriage, I became even more passionate about it. I experimented with new recipes, improving my skills every day. Larry used to praise my cooking, finishing every meal with a satisfied smile. "Wow, this is amazing," he would say. "Really? I'm so glad you like it," I'd reply, feeling genuinely happy and fulfilled. His compliments motivated me to keep going, to put more effort into every dish I made. I thought he truly appreciated me. But then, our peaceful newlywed life took a sudden turn. Larry's father passed away, leaving his mother all alone. After the funeral, Larry came to me with a serious expression. "As the eldest son, I can't leave my mother alone," he said. "She has no one else. I want her to live with us." At that moment, I had no idea how much my life was about to change. At first, I didn't have a bad impression of my mother-in-law. I had only met her a few times before moving in, and while she seemed a bit strict, I thought we could get along. However, I was worried. Living under the same roof meant I'd have to be constantly attentive to her needs. But my husband, Larry, was determined. "She's my mother," he insisted. "She has no one else. It's our responsibility." Reluctantly, I gave in. And just like that, my new life began, living with my husband and mother-in-law in my in-laws' house. It didn't take long for reality to hit me. From the very beginning, my mother-in-law treated me poorly. She was lazy, expecting me to handle every chore while she sat around doing nothing. Yet, despite leaving all the housework to me, she never missed a chance to criticize my efforts. "You don't clean properly," she'd say, running a finger across some invisible dust. "You lack attention to detail." Her biggest complaints, however, were about my cooking. One day, she claimed the food was too salty. So, the next day, I used less salt, only for her to say it was too bland and refuse to eat it. Some mornings, after spending time carefully preparing breakfast, she'd glance at the meal and say, "I'm not in the mood for this today," pushing her plate away like a spoiled child. But the worst part? Breakfast itself became a battleground. Since we had moved into her house, my husband now had a much longer commute, about an hour and a half each way. He had to leave early in the morning, which meant I had to wake up early to prepare his breakfast. At first, I thought it made sense to keep it simple. A quick toast with scrambled eggs, maybe some fruit. just enough to get him going for the day. But my mother-in-law was furious. "How could you serve something so light to the breadwinner of this family?" she snapped. "A man needs a full meal in the morning. You should be cooking a main dish, side dishes, and fruit every single day." I wanted to argue. I wanted to tell her that waking up at dawn to prepare an elaborate breakfast was unreasonable. But before I could say anything, my husband sided with her. "Mama's right," he said, barely looking at me. "From tomorrow, I'd like you to start making a proper breakfast." I felt completely alone. No one was on my side. No one cared how exhausted I was. Still, I held on to my patience. I told myself that things would get better. That maybe, just maybe, my mother-in-law would eventually warm up to me. At that time, I was still hopeful. I had no idea how much worse things were about to get. I was determined to make the perfect breakfast, to surprise them, to finally win their approval. So, I started waking up at 5:30 a.m. every day, putting my heart and soul into cooking. One morning, I made a fresh summer breakfast, sautéed spinach, perfectly cooked eggs, and a side of fresh fruit. The next day, I tried something different, a fluffy omelet filled with diced tomatoes, onions, and bell peppers, served with grilled sausages on the side. I experimented with different dishes, constantly adding new flavors and combinations. I put in so much effort, hoping they would finally appreciate my cooking. But no matter what I made, my mother-in-law always found something to criticize. "This is awful," she would say with a disgusted look. "What kind of horrible dish is this?" At first, my husband would say it was delicious. But the more she complained, the more he started to echo her words. "She's right," he eventually said. "It just tastes kind of off." That was when I realized my husband had always been a bit of a mama's boy, but after moving in, it got worse. He blindly followed her every opinion, agreeing with whatever she said. Day after day, they both criticized my cooking, telling me it was bad. Even though I knew my food tasted fine when I ate it myself, their constant remarks slowly wore me down. I started doubting myself. Maybe I really don't have any talent for cooking, but then something happened that changed everything. One day, I received an invitation to a home party. It was a potluck, and everyone was supposed to bring a dish. At first, I hesitated. What if my food really is terrible? What if they hate it too? But I pushed aside my doubts and decided to go for it. I carefully prepared my dish and brought it to the party. I watched nervously as the guests started tasting it. Then, something unexpected happened. Everyone loved it. People came up to me, showering me with compliments. "This is amazing. You're such a great cook. I need this recipe." Hearing those words, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time: pride. At that moment, I realized the truth. It was never about my cooking. It was my mother-in-law who was the problem. She had been putting me down for no reason. Feeling confident for the first time in months, I went home and confronted them. My friend Angela, who had been at the party, backed me up. She called my mother-in-law and my husband into the living room and firmly told them, "You need to stop criticizing her cooking." Everyone at the party loved her food. "It's not her, it's you." I took a deep breath and added, "I know I'm a good cook now. I won't listen to your nonsense anymore." For the first time, my mother-in-law looked embarrassed. Then, instead of apologizing, she scoffed. "Oh, come on. You're so boring. Can't you take a joke?" I blinked. A joke? Was she serious? A joke. I repeated, my voice rising. "You've been putting me down every single day, making me feel worthless, and now you're saying it was all just a joke?" She rolled her eyes. Young people these days are so sensitive. I clenched my fists. "You have no idea how much pain you've put me through." She let out a dramatic sigh. "Oh, stop exaggerating." I stared at her in disbelief. At that moment, I knew one thing for sure. No matter how much effort I put in, she was never going to change. And honestly, I was done trying. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Instead of supporting me, my husband sighed and said, "Laura, calm down. Don't embarrass my mother." Embarrass her? Was I the one at fault here? I had wanted to have a proper conversation, to finally make them understand how hurtful their words were. But instead, it felt like I was being treated like a joke. Nothing I said seemed to matter. A heavy, gloomy feeling settled inside me. But then, one morning at breakfast, I finally snapped. As always, I woke up at 5:30 a.m. and went straight to the kitchen. I prepared a hearty meal, fried eggs, crispy bacon, perfectly seasoned spinach, fluffy pancakes, and a side of fresh fruit. I tasted everything, and it was delicious. I felt proud of my effort. Soon, my husband and mother-in-law joined me at the table. My husband took a bite, muttered, "Oh," and for a second, I thought he actually liked it. But then, my mother-in-law smirked and, once again, said the unthinkable. "What is this?" she scoffed, poking at her plate. "It looks like dog food." I felt my stomach twist. Not again. "I can't believe you serve this kind of food," she continued, shaking her head as if I had committed some terrible crime. I clenched my fists under the table, trying to stay calm. But then my husband, after barely tasting his food, added, "Yeah, that should taste bad, right? I'd rather eat dog food than this." That was it. I had reached my limit. Without saying a word, I stood up, grabbed every single plate from the table, and walked straight to the trash. Then, in one swift motion, I dumped everything in. "What the hell are you doing?" my husband shouted, standing up in shock. "You're wasting food," my mother-in-law added, equally outraged. I turned to them, my voice cold and firm. "I'd rather throw it away than let either of you eat it." Then, I carefully wrapped my own portion in plastic wrap and placed it in the fridge for later. "What am I supposed to eat for breakfast?" my husband complained, looking at me like I had personally ruined his day. I shrugged. "Cook whatever you want." "We don't have time for that," he snapped. I looked him dead in the eye. "I don't care. You won't die if you skip one meal." My husband opened his mouth to argue, but he glanced at the clock. It was time for him to leave for work. With an annoyed sigh, he grabbed his things and stormed out. My mother-in-law, as expected, had to get the last word in. "Because of your selfishness, we now have to go out just to get breakfast." I ignored her completely and went on with my cleaning. A little later, I took out my own meal, the one I had saved, and ate it for lunch. And you know what? It was delicious. For the first time in a long while, I actually enjoyed my food, without criticism, without insults. Then, during my lunch break, my phone buzzed. A message from my husband. I sighed and picked up my phone, wondering what kind of nonsense he was about to say next. Later that afternoon, my phone buzzed again. It was a message from my husband. "I had to buy a sandwich from the supermarket because you threw away my breakfast." When I told my coworkers, they all said they felt sorry for me. "I don't know why you're so mad, but tomorrow you better do better." I stared at my screen in disbelief. He was acting like he was the victim, like I was the one in the wrong. I felt a wave of anger so strong that I could barely think straight. That was the moment I knew I was done. Without a second thought, I grabbed my things and headed straight to the city office to get the divorce papers. That evening, when my husband returned home from work, I was waiting for him in the living room, the divorce papers laid out neatly on the table. As soon as he saw them, his eyes widened in shock. My mother-in-law, who had just entered the room, gasped. "What the hell is this?" my husband demanded. "I'm filing for divorce," I said calmly. "I've had enough." My mother-in-law scoffed. "Oh, come on. Divorce? Over something so trivial? You're overreacting." My husband folded his arms. "Yeah, you're being ridiculous. You're mentally unstable if you think this is worth ending a marriage over." I let out a bitter laugh. "Mentally unstable? You know what's unstable? The way you let your mother treat me like garbage every single day. The way you ignored every warning, every complaint, and told me to just deal with it." They both fell silent. I took a deep breath and continued. "Do you remember how many times I told you that your mother's behavior was abusive? That her constant insults, her belittling, and the way she treated me like a servant were destroying me? But every time you brushed it off. You said it was a joke." Still, no response. "Well, guess what?" I said, looking him dead in the eye. "It wasn't a joke to me. And I don't want to stay in this house another second. I'm leaving." I grabbed my bags and walked toward the door. Wait, my husband called out. We can talk about this. I shook my head. Talk to my lawyer. With that, I walked out. For a while, my husband refused to accept the divorce. He tried to act like it was just a phase, like I would come crawling back. But thanks to my lawyer, the process moved forward. And one more thing, before I left, I had secretly recorded every single morning where my mother-in-law insulted me, and my husband sat there, letting it happen. I had proof of all the emotional abuse, and because of that, I was able to secure alimony for moral harassment. Months passed. My life was peaceful again. No more early morning insults. No more exhaustion. No more walking on eggshells. Then one day, I got a call from my ex-husband. His voice was shaky, almost desperate. Laura, please, come back. I nearly laughed. Why? My mother's cooking is awful, he admitted. I got used to her meals, and now, everything she makes is way too salty. I can barely eat it. It makes me sick. I rolled my eyes. She's also too lazy to do any housework, he continued. I didn't realize how much you did until you left. Now she complains about cleaning and gets exhausted over the smallest chores. It's unbearable. I let out a sigh. Sounds like a you problem. Laura, please, he begged. I made a mistake. I shouldn't have treated you that way. I paused, then said the words I had been wanting to say for a long time. It's too late. My love for him was gone. Completely. And I had no intention of ever looking back. Of course, I wasn't going to let my ex-husband off that easily. I had a little revenge plan for him. Since many of my former colleagues still worked at his office, I decided to meet up with them and tell them the truth. I gathered all the evidence, photos of the elaborate breakfasts I had prepared every single morning. Each dish was carefully plated, a different menu every day. I had worked so hard, and he had treated me like nothing. So, I created a new Instagram account and started posting all the pictures. I made sure to highlight how much effort I had put into cooking, how dedicated I had been as a wife. When I showed my Instagram to my former coworkers, they were stunned. I can't believe he still complained after all this, one of them said. Another shook their head. He told us you were lazy and didn't take care of him. What a liar. Word spread like wildfire. Soon, the entire company knew what kind of man my ex-husband really was, the husband who belittled his wife while she was doing everything for him. The man who sided with his toxic mother and treated his wife like a servant. And just like that, my ex-husband became the office joke. His coworkers gave him cold looks. People whispered behind his back. No one felt sorry for him anymore. Honestly, he deserved it. Meanwhile, my life took a turn for the better. I found a new job, one where I was respected and valued. Now I live comfortably on my own, free from the weight of my past. No more waking up at 5:30 a.m. No more walking on eggshells. No more bending over backward for people who don't appreciate me. I sleep peacefully every night, and for the first time in a long time, I wake up feeling happy. Cooking, which once felt like a duty, has become one of my favorite hobbies. I try new recipes, experiment with different flavors, and most importantly, I cook for myself because I love it, not because I have to. And as for my ex-husband, well, let's just say he's stuck eating his mother's awful cooking. And I've never been happier.